In today's news, Mr. Royden Sebastian was charged and remanded to jail for the murder of Mr. George Shawala Burrows.
And the BVI awaits updates on reopening of protocols for schools and temporary termination. All this and so much more when 284 News returns.
How does financial services benefit the BVI? It's been around for more than 3 decades before the World Wide Web and is now part of the everyday life of our islands. More than 2,200 people are directly employed in financial services, and another 3,000 jobs are supported indirectly. Jobs are corporate service providers, lawyers, insolvency, accounting, banking, insurance, regulators. That's almost 27% of the national workforce. Of those, more than 65% are BVI landers and belongers. What about restaurants, supermarkets, or shops? Well, 100% of people eat. So, they buy food. They buy swimsuits and shampoo and cars and power tools and plantains and fish and roti and pates. Financial services employees buy painkillers and lots of beer. Then there's electricity and dental floss and toilet paper and pretty much everything else. And everyone needs a roof over their heads and a place to do business, so we all rent or buy from a local landlord. Housing and office space alone means millions of dollars into the pockets of BVI families. At the end of the day, everyone benefits, including charities who receive thousands of dollars every year. And more than 60% of all government revenues come from fees paid by financial services. This money is spent on schools, roads, ports, scholarships, the environment, health, sports, children, youths, and the elderly. Financial services contributes more than $290 million to the BVI economy. That's more than 30% of all economic activity is driven by financial services. This creates thousands of jobs all across the islands, meaning more people have a way to earn a living. What does financial services do for the BVI? Let's just say, it keeps our lights on. Financial services is everybody's business. So, come on, mind your business, and let's not keep this to ourselves.
Viewers, welcome to 284 News. It is Thursday, October 15th, 2020. My name is Yvonne Wilson.
And I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes. Another beautiful day right here in the British Virgin Islands.
Absolutely. Now, Kyla, just last week we had the honor of sitting down with Honorable Premier Foy on some pertinent issues, of course, in the territory, a lot of which he did mention when we asked those questions. He did mention that Cabinet would be meeting this week, of course, to discuss some of those issues, and a decision will be made. Well, viewers, unfortunately, Cabinet is yet to meet, and some persons are a bit disgruntled in the community. One resident said, and I quote, "We were told re-entry protocols would be announced this week. We were told a decision regarding the October 31st temporary termination extension would be announced this week. We were also told that a decision regarding the opening of public schools would come this week. Today is Thursday, and no announcements have been made as yet. The business week ends tomorrow. The calendar week ends on Saturday. When are these promised announcements going to be made?" End of quote. Now, Kyla, I know these are the topics that have been at the forefront of our conversations here at 284 Media, but across the territory, as it relates to the reopening protocols for months, the industry specifically, and even through the channels of BVI-CCHA have been calling for those protocols to be rolled out in light of the fact that we are so dependent on tourism, and preparation is key as we prepare to reopen on December 1st. In addition to that, schools, being now that the curfew has been lifted to 12 a.m. Daily, persons are now of the opinion that public schools should be reopened as well. We do know that the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew Foy, mentioned last week, being very positive actually, in conversation with the Financial Secretary and the Minister of Education, with hopes of coming to a decision this week. And then, of course, as it relates to the temporary termination, what we find is lots of businesses are trying to figure out whether to sever staff or whether to bring them back, retain those staff. And based on the uncertainty that we have in the territory relating to the economy, it's kind of difficult to make a decision. So I do know that Cabinet usually meets on Wednesday. However, that was not the case this week. I think it should be tomorrow, but that has not been confirmed either by the government of the Virgin Islands.
Javon, I think we see here where the residents are listening, but also holding the government accountable. You said that you would make an announcement this week, and people are impatiently waiting, and justifiably so. These are big decisions. As you said, these are persons' livelihoods. This is children's education at hand, and here we see the reopening in about a month and a half, and no announcement as it pertains to the protocols. Of course, we do not discount the fact that I do think that the government is working very hard at this time, but people are anxious.
Absolutely.
Because so much is at stake, and they're holding our leaders accountable as it pertains to just giving that information, not just giving the information, but also in a timely manner.
Absolutely, Kyla. We also know of the highly anticipated Wellness Retreat weekend, of course, from the 23rd, which is the actual holiday, next Friday, the 23rd to the 25th. Full weekend, well, by popular request, as you can see on the screen. The person in charge, of course, Dr. Charlene Lewis, she has now revamped some of those prices for persons who may want to not necessarily stay in, but visit during the individual days. And based on what you're seeing on the screen, each day has something very special to offer. So what she has said is that the sleep-in space is almost full. However, for persons who want to come and spend the day, just go through the activities. And of course, this event speaks to the mind, body, and soul. And what better time than in the middle of this pandemic that we're dealing with. Of course, you can come alone, or you can come with a partner or a friend. So very good news coming. Of course, you can contact Dr. Charlene Lewis on Facebook, Instagram. She's very accessible. Of course, she is the general practitioner as well at the Wellness Center. So viewers, you still have the opportunity. I think it's up until October 19th to get your tickets now.
Javon, we've been stressing the importance of wellness, mental wellness, just altogether a well-rounded wellness in general. And this is definitely an awesome opportunity for persons to really zone into that, zone out of all that is happening, which is a lot, and really zone into self and that self-care. So definitely encouraging persons to go out and find out more about this.
Absolutely. We're going to head straight into our newscast for today. Now, members of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force have now apprehended and charged Mr. Royden Sebastian for the gruesome murder of Mr. George Shawala Burrows. The October 14th report from the police force stated that the major crime team charged one man, Mr. Royden Sebastian, for the murder of George Burrows. Sebastian, 37 of Free Bottom, was taken into custody yesterday afternoon by the team, questioned, and subsequently charged. Well, viewers, Mr. Sebastian attended court just today and was remanded as the matter was indictable. The court also heard that the gunman tried to kill Shawala's sons. Upon entry into the home, the suspect bumped into Shawala's stepson. He immediately fired a shot, but the young man managed to escape without any injuries. The gunman then turned his weapon to Mr. Burrows and dealt him that fatal shot. The gunman then turned to the second son, who, viewers, was in a wheelchair, and allegedly pulled the trigger, but the court heard that the gun did not go off at the time. He then fled the scene, leaving a few witnesses behind. Today, the court also heard that the suspect was apprehended based on, get this, Kyla, the testimony of witnesses who saw the suspect fleeing the crime scene. They immediately recognized who the person was based on the reports today in court. The suspect maintains that he is innocent and told the court that he was on the basketball court at the time in the presence of other persons. He was subsequently denied bail and remanded to Her Majesty's prison until his next court hearing, which is going to be on February 1st, 2021. Now, viewers, this is not the perpetrator's first run-in with the law. Sebastian pleaded guilty to charges back in 2010 in the first bank robbery, where over $31,000 was stolen. He was accompanied then by two masked gunmen. Also back in 2007, He was implicated in the 2007 robbery of the Bank of the Virgin Islands, which then Education and Culture Minister and now Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Foy, was shot. Mr. Sebastian was subsequently cleared of those charges in 2018 when the magistrate court determined that there was no evidence linking him to the robbery. Now, George Shawala Burrows, compassionately known as Panchi's brother, was a father of four and well known for his community, as a very decent, upstanding, and comedic man. He was also an exceptional softball player. Now, Kyla, on September 2nd, I think the news truly rocked the territory. Clearly, Mr. Shawala, of course, as he's compassionately known, Mr. George Burrows was such a well-known person, very compassionate. I remember the outpouring of love and sentiments as the news hit the territory. Honorable Alvaro Maduro Keynes, yes, the district representative, was really devastated at what happened and really sharing that he was definitely somebody in the community that looked out for other people, especially his children. She even referenced the fact that, at one point he was really concerned that he may have contracted COVID-19. And upon realizing, immediately separated himself and began testing. And that was the true nature of who he was. So it's just, I wouldn't say rewarding, but refreshing to see that somebody has been apprehended and that justice is seemingly being served. But more importantly, Kyla, we live in such a small community where it's often difficult and challenging for persons to come forward with pertinent information. So I'm really happy to see us taking this matter into our own hands and speaking out against some of the ills and injustices in our community.
As you said, Javon, when this happened, many persons were shaken by this, and just last weekend, Mr. Burrows was laid to rest on the softball field, and I think that was a true celebration of his life and what he did for our community. Many persons came out to support the family and see him for the very last time. And now this week we see where the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force has someone in custody and charged with the murder of Mr. Burrows. So as you said, not necessarily rewarding, but definitely brings some closure to the family of Mr. Burrows.
Absolutely.
Most definitely. Now, as we move on, the United States Center of Disease Control and Prevention, which is known as the CDC, has issued their travel notices by destinations, of course. The CDC has issued, so far, deemed 5 Eastern Caribbean countries safe of its citizens to travel, or for persons or travelers to travel to these countries. The countries have no travel notice issues against them. They are Anguilla, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia. The CDC said the COVID-19 risk in these countries are very low, that no travel notice has been issued. CDC Bermuda, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines and they were classified as level 2, which means that the risk is moderate as it pertains to COVID-19 in those islands. Meanwhile, despite having only one confirmed COVID-19 case, the BVI is still listed as level 3, a level 3 destination, which means that the risk of contracting the virus is high in the British Virgin Islands by standards of the CDC. Also listed on the CDC website as a level 3 destination right here in the Caribbean is Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Puerto Rico, St. Martin, both of them French and Dutch, Trinidad and Tobago, Turks and Caicos Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, for these countries, the CDC urges travelers to avoid and to consider postponing non-essential travel to these destinations. Now, because of COVID-19, the pandemic, almost all countries have been placed on the CDC's COVID-19 travel recommendations by destination, may it be a level 0 to a level 3. Now, due to the proximity and cheap airfare of the United States is one of the most essential locations for Caribbean tourism as we know it. And as we know, Javon, so many Caribbean destinations are reopening for tourism. And although many Caribbean islands, including the BVI, are hopeful, to reopen their borders to tourists, we see where these advisories, such as just may pose some deterrents for travelers.
Absolutely. I think this is a similar concern that we had when there was the statement made by the Minister of Health, Honorable Carvin Malone, about the BVI possibly having 1,500 asymptomatic cases. What we saw, especially from tourism professionals within the BVI, is they were really speaking out against it because on the international scene and persons looking in, especially entities like CDC, that could be a red flag. And like you said, a huge deterrent. So we're happy to see that at least some countries in the region have been removed from that flagged list, and persons can openly embrace coming back to the region. But also, we can't wait for persons to return to the BVI as well.
Definitely. Still ahead, viewers, remember, we have so much for you. The fact that London is now having some tighter restrictions, so much more when 284 News returns.
How does financial services benefit the BVI? It's been around for more than 3 decades before the World Wide Web and is now part of the everyday life of our islands. More than 2,200 people are directly employed in financial services, and another 3,000 jobs are supported indirectly. Jobs are corporate service providers, lawyers, insolvency, accounting, banking, insurance, regulators. That's almost 27% of the national workforce. Of those, more than 65% are BVI landers and belongers. What about restaurants, supermarkets, or shops? Well, 100% of people eat. So, they buy food. They buy swimsuits and shampoo and cars and power tools and plantains and fish and roti and pates. Financial services employees buy painkillers and lots of beer. Then there's electricity and dental floss and toilet paper and pretty much everything else. And everyone needs a roof over their heads and a place to do business, so we all rent or buy from a local landlord. Housing and office space alone means millions of dollars into the pockets of BVI families. At the end of the day, everyone benefits, including charities who receive thousands of dollars every year. And more than 60% of all government revenues come from fees paid by financial services. This money is spent on schools, roads, ports, scholarships, the environment, health, sports, children, youths, and the elderly. Financial services contributes more than $290 million to the BVI economy. That's more than 30% of all economic activity is driven by financial services. This creates thousands of jobs all across the islands, meaning more people have a way to earn a living. What does financial services do for the BVI? Let's just say it keeps our lights on. Financial services is everybody's business. So, come on, mind your business and let's not keep this to ourselves.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, news coming out of the eastern end of the island. Officers of the Major Crime Unit have charged one man with keeping an illegal firearm after a search warrant executed yesterday on a home in Greenland East End uncovered the loaded handgun. Now, the man, Deshaun Benjamin, which is 24 of Greenland, is to appear in court today to face the charges. Others will likely be prosecuted in relation to the same weapon. Now, Commissioner of Police Michael Matthews says that the recent arrest in firearm-related offenses is due to the commendable work of his officers. He said, and I quote, "These officers pushed through many hours well beyond most of us to bring about these arrests without public fanfare or applause. Very few will understand or appreciate the patience and the diligence required. I know what is required and will consistently give them the praise and support they are due. They deserve it," the commissioner said. So we see where the commissioner is praising his officers. We sat down with him earlier today, and he was basically saying to give credit where credit is due. At the end of the day, we see policemen out there, and sometimes they get some bad media, but it has much police officers out there that are just getting the job done. We have seen many arrests as it pertains to gun-related and illegal firearms coming out of the street. So that is definitely commendable work by the officers.
Absolutely. Police Commissioner Mr. Michael Matthews is definitely going out with a bang, I have to say that. Yes, Kyla, a war has been declared on crime locally. We see lots of persons being apprehended. We see lots of busts. We see war being declared, especially as it relates to protecting our territorial waters. So the police definitely has their job cut out for them, but they're getting the task, and I think that's truly all that matters. And like you said, sometimes we don't necessarily give them the credit that they deserve. There's a fragile relationship between the police and the community, and of course we have to continue to try and find ways to bridge the gap, but very happy to see that we're doing what we need to do. Viewers, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're getting into our regional as well as our international news. Stick with us.
The win! Oh!
What are the hell?
I'm freaking out!
Is time.
284 News.
Coming to you live and direct from the beautiful British Virgin Islands.
What's poppin', what's really good, what's happening, what's up?
Davis has won it for the Lakers!
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Kyle, like we were mentioning before the break, the police is really doing a good job, and we want to also commend them, especially here at 284 Media, for everything that they're doing. Now, as we move on to the regional scene, as more Caribbean islands reopen, new protocols are being reintroduced on a continuous basis to woo visitors while ensuring the safety of citizens. Now, among the measures some islands have implemented is the use of apps to track people's movement in the event that they test positive for COVID-19 and provide them with information they need to keep them up to date with the relevant COVID-19 protocols. Now, here are just a few of the islands utilizing apps to assist in their efforts. We have Curacao. Curacao is using the Douchy Stay app. It's labeled one of the first apps of this kind. The Douchy Stay gives travelers access to entry requirements, new island-wide protocols, emergency contact numbers, and health tips, as well as open restaurants, attractions, and beaches, etc., all at their fingertips. Over in Grenada, they're using the Rona Track contract tracing app. Now, with that one, travelers can provide their own self-health assessments. This application is aimed at augmenting the initiatives of the government of Grenada, particularly the Ministry of Health, in proactively reaching out to and informing the users of the app regarding preventative measures, risk factors, best practices, and relevant advisories pertaining to the containment of COVID-19. We pan across to Jamaica. Jamaica is using the Jam COVID-19 app. And I love the way Jamaica always personalizes everything to fit their name. Good marketing. But this is available for download on Androids as well as the iOS devices. The app was developed through a public-private partnership with Amber Group Limited and is an easy-to-use centralized source for the government's COVID-19 information and services. The app also allows citizens to report their health status, book an appointment for testing, which I really like, if they are exhibiting, of course, any symptoms of COVID-19, as well as request emergency services such as the police or even an ambulance. Jamaicans wishing to return are now being asked to use the Immigration or Travel tab under the app to register for the government's controlled re-entry program. The entire process from application to approval to completing the Immigration and Customs declaration is managed completely online through this app. Bahamas, of course, we cannot forget the Bahamas. They're using the Hubcap app. All travelers to the Bahamas must submit and install the Hubcap app on their cellular phones for the purposes of contact tracing. Visitors should also download the app prior to travel, in order to expedite their arrival process. In St. Kitts, of course, not too far from us, they're using the National COVID-19 mobile application. Now, they're preparing to reopen, as we know, Kyla, and the chief medical officer over there, Dr. Hazel, said that the app will be launched shortly after officials finalize some of those legal requirements. It will have a geofencing feature to monitor the location of people to ensure that they are not outside of where they ought to be. The feature will aid in contact tracing if any cases of COVID-19 are detected. The app also contains a clinical management aspect which allows an individual to communicate with the health authorities if they experience any difficulty breathing. Kyla, so happy, honored, and thrilled to be living in the technological age, because even in the midst of COVID-19, here we see many countries, not just within the region, but across the world, truly taking advantage of technology as we aim to manage ourselves in this pandemic. Like we continue to push here at 284 Media, especially persons in the region, countries within the region are realizing more and more that tourism is everybody's business, and tourism is the bread and butter, really.
Yeah.
So persons are trying to find creative ways to ensure not only that they get tourists back into the region, but also ensure that they're equally protecting their citizens. And we do know the Premier did announce on that very first meeting with the industry stakeholders that the BVI is also working with the IATA to develop a similar app, of course, where persons traveling to the BVI will be required, even before entry and approval, to submit their negative test results and all the other relevant information. So I just think this is the way to go, and I'm happy to see us adopting.
Javon, what a time to live, to be alive at the end of the day. And I think with COVID-19, it has definitely taught us to be innovative. And we see where across the region, that is exactly what we're doing. If technology can make this a bit easier, why not?
Absolutely.
Most definitely. And our last story for today, viewers, now 2 of Europe's biggest capitals are in trouble as Paris imposed overnight curfews and London bans persons from different households from meeting indoors to combat the spread of COVID-19. And if we can just take a pause there, Javon, I think at the end of the day, we here in the BVI may feel that we have the most restrictions, but even in the biggest capitals of the world, we see where they're doing all that they can to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Absolutely. And it's almost like a push and pull factor, because sometimes you see them reopening, but based on the
then
spread and the surge, they have to pull back.
And that's just the nature of the beast. The announcements came as countries across Europe tightened their restrictions following a surge of COVID-19 numbers in most countries. The French capital and many cities will face a 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew starting at midnight on Friday. This was said by the president of Paris. He said, and I quote, "The aim is to reduce private contact, which are the most dangerous contact." At the end of the day, he said, violating the nighttime curfew will carry a fine of 135 euros, which is about $160 for your first offense, and then 1,500 euros, which is $1,760 if the offense is repeated. And France have reported upwards of 22,000 new cases a day. This is for a day, Javon, at the end of the day, and bringing its total to 779,000, upwards of that in that country. So we see where they're really grappling with COVID-19 in France, and also in London. They will move from a tier 1, which is medium, to a tier 2, which is high alert level of coronavirus restrictions come Saturday morning. The UK Health Secretary announced on Thursday. It means that Londoners will be banned from mixing with other households indoors in any setting at all, including in pubs and restaurants. Outdoor gatherings will be limited to 6 people, and people should also avoid using public transportation where possible. So we see where across the world, Javon, where countries are doing whatever they have to do. Of course, the people over there in Europe is not happy, but they have to do what is needed.
Absolutely. You have to create a balance between health and the economy. I think that's the balance we're all trying to strike across the world.
Most
Viewers,
definitely.
that is it for today's News Roundup. You can catch more news on 284media.com. But for now, we want to thank you for joining us. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I am Kyla Kenesha Forbes. See you again tomorrow.
Bye.